The March 1985 sun bathed Christ, the Redeemer, in a golden light that contrasted dramatically with the tragedy that was about to unfold. At 9 a.m. on that Saturday, March 23rd, identical twins Sofia and Helena Carvalho, just 8 years old, walked hand in hand along the Corcovado Trail, accompanied by their parents, Ricardo and Mariana Carvalho, and a group of 15 tourists from São Paulo who were taking part in an organized excursion. The girls wore identical blue dresses with white bows, chosen especially by Mariana for this special trip to Rio de Janeiro. It was the first time the family had left Belo Horizonte to see Rio's tourist attractions, and Ricardo had promised his daughters that they would visit all the postcards of the wonderful city. Tour guide Miguel Santos, a 42-year-old Rio native with 20 years of experience, led the group with his usual enthusiasm, telling stories about the monument's construction and pointing out the main points of the landscape. Around 10:15, as the group approached the base of Christ the Redeemer, Sofia asked her parents for permission to go to the bathroom. Helena, as always inseparable from her twin sister, asked to accompany her. Mariana hesitated for a moment, but Miguel reassured the family, explaining that the bathrooms were only 50 meters away in a completely safe and busy area. Ricardo looked at his watch and told his daughters to be back in no more than 10 minutes, as the group would be heading to the next stop on the route. The two girls ran happily towards the bathrooms, their childish voices echoing throughout the place as they played at imitating the solemn gestures of the statue of Christ. Mariana watched them until she lost sight of them behind a group of Japanese tourists taking photographs. It was exactly 10:17 when Sofia and Helena Carvalho disappeared from everyone's sight forever. 15 minutes passed, then 20, then half an hour. Ricardo began to show signs of nervousness, pacing back and forth and constantly looking towards the bathrooms. Mariana, initially calm, began to feel a tightness in her chest that grew by the minute. Miguel tried to reassure the couple, suggesting that the girls might have been distracted by some attraction or found other interesting tourists to talk to. At 11 o'clock, Ricardo could no longer contain his anxiety. He ran to the women's restrooms and asked several women to check if his daughters were inside. They all came back with the same answer. There were no children in the bathrooms. Miguel immediately contacted local security, and within minutes, an impromptu search operation was underway. Mariana's despair was palpable. She screamed her daughters' names as she ran to every accessible corner of the monument, checking every possible hiding place. Ricardo maintained a more controlled appearance, but his hands were visibly shaking as he spoke to security guards and staff at the venue. Guide Miguel immediately canceled the rest of the tour and mobilized all the tourists in the group to help with the search. The military police were called at 11:30. Sergeant Bruno Ferreira, a veteran with 15 years of experience in incidents on Corcovado, took on the initial coordination of the search. He systematically questioned all the employees who were working in the area that morning, including souvenir sellers, tour equipment operators, and cleaning staff. One fact immediately caught Sergeant Ferreira's attention. Antonio Machado, a 53-year-old cleaning employee, reported seeing two girls in blue dresses talking to an unknown man near the parking lot around 10:20. According to Antonio, the man appeared to be offering something to the children, possibly candy or toys, but he could not see it clearly due to the distance and the movement of tourists in the area. The description provided by Antonio was fragmentary. A white man, appearing to be between 30 and 40 years old, wearing a light shirt and jeans, with dark hair and of medium height. Unfortunately, Antonio was unable to provide any further specific details, as his attention was focused on his work tasks when he spotted the scene. The civil police took over the case in the early afternoon, with Delegate Gabriel Oliveira being appointed to lead the investigation. Oliveira, a 45-year-old experienced investigator, immediately established a temporary command post at the scene and began coordinating a wider search operation, which included helicopters, sniffer dogs, and dozens of police officers searching the entire Corcovado area and surrounding areas. The first 24 hours were crucial. All accesses to Corcovado were blocked and searched. Cars, buses, and vans were inspected. The Rio de Janeiro press quickly mobilized, and the case of the missing twins at Christ the Redeemer became headline news in all the local newspapers. Photographs of Sofia and Helena were distributed widely, and a special telephone was installed to receive information from the population. During interrogations, a worrying pattern began to emerge. At least 3 different employees reported noticing a man who did not appear to be a typical tourist in the area throughout that week. Fernanda Gomes, an operator at one of the snack bars, said she had seen the same individual on at least 4 different occasions, always observing groups of tourists with children. She described him as someone who didn't behave like a normal tourist, staying in the same place for long periods of time without taking photographs or buying souvenirs. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to discover more intriguing cases like this one. The investigation intensified when Chief Oliveira received information that a man matching the description had been seen at Pio de Acacar 2 days before the disappearance, demonstrating similar behavior. A cable car employee, Juliana Santos, confirmed that she noticed a suspicious individual observing families with children for several consecutive days. The searches expanded beyond Corcovado. Teams of investigators searched hotels, inns, bus stations, and airports. All employees who worked at tourist attractions in Rio de Janeiro were questioned. The federal police were called due to the possibility that the children had been transported to other states. Ricardo and Mariana Carvalho remained in Rio de Janeiro, refusing to return to Belo Horizonte without their daughters. They stayed in a hotel in Copacabana and spent every day monitoring the searches, distributing leaflets, and giving interviews to the press. The couple's suffering was evident, but they maintained an unshakable hope of finding Sofia and Helena. Again, 3 weeks after the disappearance, the investigation began to cool down. Despite hundreds of leads investigated and dozens of people questioned, no concrete evidence had been found. The mysterious man described by several witnesses seemed to have simply disappeared, as if he had never existed. It was then that Paulo Nascimento, a young 28-year-old detective, recently transferred to Chief Oliveira's team, suggested a different approach. Paulo proposed that they review all records of missing children in Rio de Janeiro over the past 5 years, looking for similar patterns that might have gone unnoticed. This decision proved to be pivotal. Paulo discovered that in the last 3 years, at least 6 cases of missing children from tourist spots in Rio de Janeiro had similar characteristics. All involved children between 6 and 10 years old. All occurred on busy weekends, and in at least 3 cases, witnesses reported seeing a suspicious man in the area days before the disappearances. Even more intriguing was the fact that all of these children had been found safe and sound between 24 and 72 hours after their disappearance, always in locations far from where they disappeared, and always without any clear memory of what had happened during the period in which they were missing. Detective Paulo intensified his research and discovered something even more revealing. In all of these previous cases, the children were found wearing different clothes than they were wearing when they disappeared, and they all reported being cared for by a very kind lady who fed them and played with them in a large house with lots of toys. This discovery took the investigation in a completely new direction. Paulo began investigating the possibility of an organized network operating in Rio's tourist spots, possibly involving temporary kidnappings of children for purposes that have yet to be clarified. During this phase of the investigation, a crucial clue emerged from an unexpected source. Mrs. Claudia Mendez, a 62-year-old woman who worked as a cleaner in a residential building in Tijuca, went to the police to report something she had witnessed 3 days after the twins disappeared. According to Claudia, she had seen two girls who exactly matched the description of Sofia and Helena being taken by an elegant woman to an apartment on the 14th floor of the building where she worked. The girls seemed calm and showed no signs of distress, but Claudia was intrigued because she had never seen that woman before, and the apartment in question had supposedly been empty for several months. Chief Inspector Oliveira immediately organized an operation to investigate the apartment mentioned by Claudia. They discovered that the property was registered in the name of Livia Araujo, a 43-year-old woman with no criminal record, who worked as a child psychologist at a private clinic in Ipanema. When confronted, Livia initially denied any involvement in the children's disappearance. However, when investigators obtained a search warrant for the apartment, they found disturbing evidence. Children's clothes in various sizes, new toys still, in their packaging, and a fully decorated room, as if it were specifically designed to accommodate children. Even more shocking was the discovery of a detailed diary in which Livia recorded information about several children she had observed at tourist attractions, including physical descriptions, family visiting times, and even secretly taken photographs. The clues are piling up, but the mystery remains. If you're trying to solve this case with me, leave your theory in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. During intensive interrogation, Livia finally confessed her involvement in the twins' disappearance, but her version of events revealed a reality much more complex and disturbing than anyone had imagined. Livia explained that she suffered from an undiagnosed psychological disorder that caused her to have a compulsive need to protect children she perceived as vulnerable or in danger. In her twisted mind, she genuinely believed she was saving these children from dangerous situations, even when there was no real danger. She revealed that she had developed an elaborate system of observing tourist families, identifying children she considered neglected by their parents. In the case of Sofia and Helena, Livia had observed the Carvalho family throughout the week before their disappearance and mistakenly interpreted the parents' normal behavior as signs of neglect. On the morning of their disappearance, Livia followed the twins to the bathrooms and managed to convince them to accompany her to her car, promising to take them to meet their parents at a nearby location. His trustworthy appearance and gentle manner of speaking made the children unsuspecting of his intentions. Livia kept Sofia and Helena in her apartment for 12 days, caring for them with extreme dedication, providing food, new clothes, toys, and even educational entertainment. The girls, although confused and worried about their parents, were not physically abused and even began to grow fond of the woman who treated them with such attention. Livia's plan was to eventually return the children to their parents, but only after educating the family on how to properly care for their daughters. In her troubled mind, she believed her role was to teach the Carvalho parents important lessons about child supervision and protection. However, as the days passed and press coverage intensified, Livia began to panic. She realized that her interpretation of the situation was completely wrong and that she had committed a serious crime. It was then that he decided to seek help from his older brother, Vitor Araujo, a respected lawyer who lived in São Paulo. Vitor was horrified when Livia confessed what she had done. He immediately recognized the gravity of the situation and insisted that they hand the children over to the authorities immediately. However, Livia was terrified of the potential legal consequences and begged her brother to help her find a way to return the girls without being arrested. It was Vitor who devised the plan to return Sofia and Helena anonymously. He convinced Livia to take them to São Paulo, where they would be left in a safe place with instructions to seek help. The plan was to make it look like the children had escaped on their own and found their way back home. On the 12th day after their disappearance, Sophia and Helena were found by a military police officer in a square in downtown São Paulo, completely healthy, but visibly confused and scared. They were immediately taken to a hospital for medical examination and then reunited with their distraught parents. The girls reported being cared for by a very good aunt who gave them gifts and played with them, but who one day simply took them to a strange place and told them they needed to find help to get home. Due to his young age and the trauma of the experience, his memories were fragmentary and not always consistent. The discovery of evidence in Livia's apartment quickly led to her arrest. During subsequent interrogations, she confessed not only to the kidnapping of Sophia and Helena, but also to her involvement in the other missing children cases that Detective Paulo had identified. Livia was formally charged with kidnapping, false imprisonment, and several other related crimes. Her defense attorney argued that she suffered from severe psychological disorders that impaired her judgment and requested that she undergo a full psychiatric evaluation. Psychological examinations revealed that Livia did indeed suffer from a complex psychological disorder that combined elements of obsessive-compulsive disorder, protective delusions, and a condition known as Savior syndrome. Experts concluded that although she understood her actions were illegal, her ability to control those impulses was severely compromised. During the trial that took place 8 months after the events, the court had to balance the need for justice with the reality of Livia's mental condition. The families of the children involved gave emotional testimonies about the trauma and suffering caused by their actions, but also acknowledged that the children had not been physically abused. Judge Eduardo Castro, who was responsible for the case, ordered Livia to be sentenced to 12 years in prison, but with the possibility of serving part of her sentence in a psychiatric hospital, provided she demonstrated significant progress in her treatment. Furthermore, she was prohibited from approaching places frequented by children and forced to continue psychological treatment even after her release. Vitor Araujo, the brother who helped return the children, was sentenced to 2 years in prison for complicity, but his sentence was suspended due to his cooperation with authorities and the fact that he acted primarily out of concern for his family. The case had a lasting impact on the safety of Rio's tourist attractions. New security measures were implemented, including increased police presence, installation of security cameras, and specific training for employees to identify suspicious behavior. For Sophia and Helena, the return to normal life was gradual and aided by specialized psychological support. Although they suffered trauma from being separated from their parents, the fact that they were well treated during captivity significantly minimized the long-term psychological damage. Ricardo and Mariana Carvalho have become active advocates for child safety measures in public places and have worked with local authorities to develop awareness programs about the risks children may face in tourist settings. Chief Inspector Gabriel Oliveira received recognition for his professional handling of the case, and Detective Paulo Nascimento was promoted due to his innovative approach that led to the solution of the mystery. His technique of analyzing patterns in previous cases has become standard protocol for investigating child disappearances. 12 years after the events, when Sophia and Helena turned 20, they gave an exclusive interview for a documentary about the case. Both reported having vague memories of their time in captivity, but described how they managed to overcome the trauma through therapy and family support. They revealed that, ironically, the experience made them more aware of personal safety and inspired them to work in areas related to child protection. Sophia graduated in psychology with a specialization in childhood trauma, while Helena chose law with a focus on child protection legislation. Livia Araujo served 8 years of her sentence, being conditionally released due to good behavior and significant progress in her psychological treatment. She remained under judicial supervision and continued to receive specialized medical care. There were no further reports of similar behavior, suggesting that the treatment was effective. The case of the Christ the Redeemer twins remains one of the most complex and impactful in Rio's criminal history, not only because of the unusual nature of the crime, but also because of the questions it raised about mental health, criminal liability, and child protection in public spaces. The investigation also highlighted the importance of collaboration between different law enforcement agencies and the active participation of the community in solving crimes. Joint work between the military police, civil police, federal police, and community citizens for a positive outcome to the case. Today, more than 40 years later, Christ the Redeemer continues to welcome millions of visitors annually, but with significantly improved security measures. The case of Sofia and Helena Carvalho serves as a constant reminder that the supervision and protection of children is the responsibility of all of society, not just their parents. The story also demonstrates how untreated psychological disorders can lead to tragic consequences, emphasizing the importance of universal access to mental health care. The Brazilian judicial system has been tested in its ability to balance justice, medical treatment, and social reintegration, setting important precedents for similar cases. For Rio de Janeiro's tourism authorities, the case represented a milestone. In the implementation of stricter safety protocols, they were later adopted by other Brazilian tourist destinations. Experience has shown that public safety in busy places requires careful planning and coordinated execution. The mystery of the missing twins at Christ the Redeemer was solved through meticulous investigation, interinstitutional collaboration, and a dose of luck represented by the crucial testimony of Mrs. Claudia Mendes. The solution revealed a reality more complex than anyone had initially imagined, showing how seemingly noble motives can lead to criminal actions when filtered through a disturbed mind. Sophia and Helena grew up to be strong women, determined to use their experience to protect other children. His parents never fully overcame the trauma of those 12 terrifying days, but they found purpose in their advocacy for greater child safety. The family remained united and stronger, demonstrating human resilience in the face of adversity. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. If you liked the story, click like and write in the comments where you are listening to us from. Enjoy and watch the next video.